everybody, I'm Leanna. Welcome to Otherwise Known as Mom, and today I am going to be talking to you guys about adoption. Adoption is a very important subject in my life right now because my family is going through the process of trying to adopt. We are adopting through foster care, which is a little bit different than a lot of adoptions. I figured I'd throw out some information because I get asked a lot of questions in my everyday about adoption, foster care, and all things in between related. So first thing I'm going to start off talking about is there are three types of adoption. There are domestic, international, and foster care CPS adoption. Now CPS stands for Child Protective Services for those that don't know. And yes, it is a domestic adoption, but it is not a traditional domestic adoption. A traditional domestic adoption is where you adopt an infant in your country and you go to an agency and you tell them I would like to adopt a baby, and then they match you with a birth mom who decides whether or not to place her child with you. Now, an international adoption is, again, you are going to approach an agency and you tell them you would like to adopt, and then they look at the countries that are open to having their children placed in the United States. And you can get anywhere from a couple months old to a few years old, depending on the country you adopt from and the laws there for international adoption. Now, the option that we chose was foster care adoption. Foster care adoption, or sorry, not foster care adoption, that's stupid. Foster care and adoption are two different things. Foster care is temporary placement in your home. Adoption is permanent placement in your home. Adopting through foster care is taking a child into your home, and if the judge so chooses that reunification with their parents is not the proper direction for this child, then you get to adopt them. But up until that point, they are foster, which means they are not permanent, they are temporary, and you don't know how long they're going to stay. We chose to take this route because of family history. I have a cousin who she gave birth to two very beautiful little babies, and because of complications with her C-section, she ended up dying when they were only a couple months old. Now, when that happened, the family was not able to take the children in, and they went into foster care. My husband and myself were not in the state at the time when this happened. We were actually in another state. We were living in this other state because of my husband's job at the time, and we could not return to where we were from. So we approached CPS, who were the ones who had custody of the children at the moment, and we asked if we could adopt them. Well, long story short, interstate compacts, which is what it's called when you transfer a child through foster care to another state, are very hard to get, and you have to be basically a brother or sister of the mom and dad to get it to really go through correctly and fast. We were not that. I was a cousin. Even though we grew up and we were close together, the state said we would need to get licensed as foster parents in our state and then apply to have the children transferred. Well, we decided to let them stay with their foster parents, and their foster parents are the ones who adopted them. We chose this route because we figured, the children didn't know us, they didn't really know anybody else but these people that had taken them in, and we let them go and be adopted. Now, after talking about that, our family had already been talking about adoption because I had always wanted to adopt, and we decided that we would like to adopt through foster care. So what you do when you go to adopt through foster care is very simple. You go to an information meeting. At the information meeting, depending on your state, there's usually a list of places that are also agencies that foster through the state. You can go directly through the state, or you can choose to go to an agency. We chose to go to an agency because we kind of like the go-between, because there's a lot of, when you are directly licensed through the state, you have to do all of your own, hey, I have this child placed with me. You have to do all of your own talking to the caseworker, getting things arranged, and with having an agency, they will do that for you. They will, you still have to talk to the caseworker and have a relationship with them, but your agency caseworker can be an advocate for you to get things done and to get things moving in certain ways when you need it moving in certain ways. Now, after the information meeting, depending on the state you're in, the state will require a certain amount of classes. Some states don't require any classes at all, and the child's just kind of thrust upon you. And states like Texas, Florida, I believe, does it too. There's a whole list. I believe adoption.org will give you the list depending on what state you tell them you're in. You will take a certain amount of hours of classes, and then you will do a FBI background check. You just have to do that everywhere. For any kind of adoption, you have to do an FBI background check, whether it's international, domestic, or CPS. That's just, they're trying to keep those kids safe, and I really commend them for that, because that's really important to keep them safe. Then you will do a fire inspection, a health inspection. I'm trying to remember all the inspections we had. We had like 10. They'll check your gas on your home to make sure it's safe. They'll check the AC. They will check the electric. And then you will have, after you do that, then you fill out a whole questionnaire, a application to adopt. Then after all your paperwork's done, all your inspections are done, then they do what's called a home study. And that's where a caseworker or a home study, what is the word? I do not remember the name of it. Anyways, they'll have basically what it is, a caseworker for the agency or a third-party caseworker that the agency hires out, and they will come to your home and they will talk to you. And they will come 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4 times. And for us, they came out twice. And they came out for 10 hours the first time and 6 hours the second. And that's just because they want to ask you about every single thing of your life. They're going to ask you about your bio kids, if you have any. They're going to ask you about your parents. They're going to ask you about your best friend. They're going to ask you about your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, who you associate with, why you are in the place you live now, what brought you there, why do you want to adopt, why do you have a dog, why do you have a cat, do you not like dogs, are you allergic to cats? They'll ask you, oh my goodness, the questions are ridiculous. The amount they get in your business, they want to know. And as long as you have an answer and you're straightforward with them, they can usually work around most instances and most circumstances. But they just want to know that you're trying and that you're working with them. So the caseworker came out twice for us, and 10 hours the first time, 6 hours the second, and asked all these questions, interviewed my kids, interviewed my husband, interviewed myself, interviewed all of us separate and all of us together. And then they went before a board, which was the state board, and presented our home study so that they could get our house open. And that was nerve-wracking because it took them 3 times before the board to get all their answers, and they still came back and asked us more questions. That was crazy. And then once that was all done, we got a call saying that we were open and that they had a child available. Now, when you get these calls for children, you want to ask them questions. And again, my adoption story is different than everybody else's. We're not even done with our adoption, to be honest, because we thought we were adopting and then turned into straight foster for now. So everybody's story is different. I have friends that their first foster child is who they adopted. I have friends that fostered 10 kids and still haven't adopted. I have friends that have fostered 3 kids and then adopted like the 4th. And then I have friends that skipped all that, did a domestic adoption, went and interviewed with a birth mom, and was chosen and adopted that child. It just really depends on your story. Everyone's different, every child's different, so every adoption story is different. For us, we're right in the middle of our adoption. We're still trying to find out if we can, who we're going to adopt and what's going to happen. We are fostering currently. The first call we got when we opened, the day we opened, we got a call and said, hey, we have this child available, do you want to take her? And we asked some questions. You always ask questions. You want to know what court they came out of, what city, because you want to know how far you're going to have to drive for visits. You have to know their background. Do they have a history of being in CPS custody? Have they been to several different homes before you? Do they have allergies? Do they have severe medical problems. You have to know all these things, and you have to have that, like, we have a list of questions we ask when we get a call, and we're like, bam, 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 bam. Because you want to know, because you don't know if this child's going to fit in your home, if they're going to work with your children, if they're going to in the rest of your family. Excuse me. So that's basically what we did. We asked all those questions, and it turned out that we were okay with having her placed. And we had this beautiful little girl for about a month, and in the process we ended up deciding that she was not the fit for our family, so she was moved to another home that would give her better accommodations for her health and her needs, because we do have 3 bio children that we have to think of. So we didn't end up adopting that child. So we're on our second placement, and our second placement was supposed to be a straight up adopt, and with the roller coaster of CPS, it is not straight up adopt. Oh my goodness. But it's still a journey we want to be on, and it's a good journey because it's worth it for the kids. And with adoption through foster care, there are so many ups and downs. You're going to be feeling so high one day, you're going to be like, yay, this is the best, I can't believe I'm doing this. And the next day you're going to be like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Why did I do this? Why did I make this decision? Why am I letting these people in my home? Because when you adopt through foster care, you are inviting the state in your home. It is a roller coaster, and it is scary, and it is crazy, because CPS is something you think of as basically someone you don't want to come in contact with. You're like, oh, they're a good organization, but I don't want anything to do with them. And it's because they can have the right to take away your kids. And that scares a lot of people. In fact, it scares me very bad. That's why you stick to all the rules that they ask you to follow, because you make sure that you lock up the medication. You make sure that you have safety plugs. You just do, because you don't want them looking poorly on you. And you know that you're going to eventually want to ask these people to be able to adopt a child. And it's stressful and it's hard. It's probably one of the hardest adoptions to go through, because also when you're doing a CPS adoption, these kids' parents 9 times out of 10 did not ask you to take them. They did not willingly sign them into the program. They did not ask you to become the new father or mother. They are actually quite angry with you, and the kids a lot of the time are confused, sad. They just want to see their birth parents, and it's a whole roller coaster, and a lot of the time it's not safe for them to be with their birth parents, so that makes it hard. And then you have to explain to a 3-year-old or 2-year-old, sorry sweetie, but you're kind of stuck with me for a little while. And it's nerve-wracking, it's scary, it's overwhelming some days, but it's worth it, because these kids make amazing changes in your home. Like, we only had our first placement for a month, maybe a month and a half total, and she made so many progress along the way in that short period of time, and we were so happy to help her. It's just, we just weren't the fit for her, and that's okay. You also have to be aware of that when you adopt through CPS, that you're going to have times where you're like, this child is perfect for me. I love them, I never want to give them up. La 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 la, they make the best placement for my family, yay! And then you realize, wait, they're going back, they're going to be reunified, and you have to support that. And you have to tell the child you're going to have a great time with your birth parents, this and that. And you make them happy and comfortable as best you can. And then you're going to have times where you're placed with a child where you're like, oh my goodness, this is hard, and I don't know what I can do. I don't even know if I can help this child, because I just don't know what to do. And that's another reality of foster care adoption. It's foster care adoption. Foster to adopt. I'm sorry. See? Look at me using the wrong language. It's called foster to adopt, because foster is one thing and adoption is another thing. Foster care is straight up, you're taking care of them for someone else, and they're going to eventually be reunified with their family, with their bio family. That's always the goal of foster. Now, adoption is they are permanently placed in your home. They are permanently there. They are your new child. They are your baby. They are your daughter, your son. They're yours. And basically, that's the difference between the two. Now, foster to adopt, that means that the goal changed along the way, and they're asking you to adopt them. Now, adoption, all adoptions become finalized in the same way. Each state requires that you have the child placed with you for 6 months before you can finalize. Now, that means that the parents' rights have to have been terminated, either willingly or against their will, and that the child is with you for 6 months for them to watch. Now, at the end of that 6 months, you do the finalization. You have a court hearing. The judge says, do you want this child to be your child? Will you raise them as your own? You do realize that they will have inheritance from you and that they will be yours forever from this point forward. You say yes to all of the above. The judge signs off. You go fill out paperwork and you either give them a name that you picked out, or you leave their first name, middle name, whatever it is, the same, and you change the last name. They then have your last name. They're issued a new social security card because it's for their safety. And they are issued a new birth certificate with you and your spouse listed as the parents. Now, we have not gotten to that point. I can't wait for that point, to be completely honest, because foster care is a crazy roller coaster. But that is basically how it goes down for adoption. Now, some people will choose to have like a ceremony afterwards to show that their family is one big family now, and other people just will say, all right, that's it, we're done. We haven't decided what we're going to do with that part, but that's adoption in a nutshell. It's a crazy roller coaster. If you'd like, leave in the comments below and I can do a video on what domestic adoption looks like, costs and things like that, or international adoption if you'd like to know. If you'd like to know more about our adoption story, leave a comment below and I will definitely share. Have a great week. I'll see you guys next time, and be sure to like or subscribe or both. All right, have a great one.